Hi, this is Dr. Cindy Woody with a quick video for you if you are preparing for the TExES 268 Principal as Instructional Leader exam, constructed response. Question number 3. So let's do the context of this question. In this scenario, the principal will be working with a teacher who has analyzed their own student data. So the teacher has given an exit ticket or some other kind of assessment, typically a formative assessment, could be summative, and you're going to be looking at the data, and then you're going to be working with the teacher who is sharing with you a plan that the teacher has made to reteach, or even to just address these standards, a plan. You're going to need to expect that the teacher is going to misunderstand or misinterpret the data and how it should inform their instruction. So that's a given. If the teacher understood all of this perfectly and was a pro at analyzing data and building a plan that was informed by the data, then you wouldn't use this person for the question, right? So let's start with the domain. The entry-level principal supports staff in effectively using instructional data, including formative and summative assessment data, to inform effective instructional practices and interventions. So that's what you're looking for in the plan, is effective instructional practices and interventions. And in the data meeting, you're looking for them to be analyzing the data themselves. The teacher analyzes the data. The principal's just there as the guide, the coach. And you're going to be looking for, and the examples I've seen, it's been formative data, but there's no reason why it couldn't be some summative data. The main key term this time that we haven't seen in the other three items, other three constructive response questions, this one really does focus on item analysis. And we do see that some in a few spots on the other questions, but it's important here because this is all about the data-informed instruction, or using data to plan for instruction. So item analysis is a data review process focused on studying individual questions on an assessment. An item analysis allows educators to evaluate the quality of each question and facilitates data disaggregation to measure student performance at different levels, determine student misconcepts, and plan for interventions. So that's it really right there, is you're trying to help the teacher realize that the reason that student performance can vary could be based on student misconceptions. It could be based on not having explicit enough instruction. It could be based on a mismatch between the instruction and the standard that was measured on the assessment tool. And it's also going to help them plan the intervention. So that's what the plan is. When we talk about a plan, a teacher-made plan. So there are other key terms. We've seen these already on, if you've seen the videos that I made for items, constructive response items 1, 2, and 4. I'm just now getting to 3. So we've seen what an exemplar is, and you can expect to see student responses to an open-ended question with an exemplar of what they should have said. So you're going to see a comparison of what an ideal answer would have looked like versus what real students or model students in this example wrote or produced. You're going to probably see an exit ticket, which probably has the exemplar attached with the exit ticket, which is a short formative assessment. I apologize, this one looks like it kind of got off the page a little bit. Let's see what we've got here. Instructional coaching, that's what this one is a process for developing a teacher's skills, knowledge, and practice to improve instruction. We're going to be asked once again to use the phrase high leverage. We're asking a high leverage question this time. So high leverage just means the quickest, most efficient way to get the teacher to think deeply or to get to the point where they need to be. And then the probing question goes with that high leverage. So we're asking a high leverage question, which, as you probably know by now, should not be a yes-no question. And it should also be pertinent to the situation. So that's where we're heading with this question. So you only have 2 things to do this time. I personally believe that the question number 3 is a little bit easier than some of the others. You may not think so because you may not like looking at the data sources. Regardless, you're going to have to ask the person, you're going to write 2 high leverage questions that the principal should ask the teacher to help improve analysis of the data in order to improve the teacher's current plan. And then you're going to explain how each question could be used to help inform the teacher's instructional practice and improve student learning. So the question is the question that you as the principal are asking the teacher. So you're going to pretend you're the principal, you're going to ask the teacher a question, and the question is asked on purpose because you've looked at the examples of the data and there's like a reason behind your questions. So high leverage question number 1, you're going to write your high leverage question number 1, your response, and somewhere right under number 1, you're going to write some evidence, and an explanation of why you decided to ask that question. The evidence and the explanation is likely going to be all connected, so it may not look exactly like this: evidence, evidence, explanation. It's more like evidence with the explanation, evidence with an explanation. So you're trying to explain why you chose this question based on what you've seen in the data and the analysis and the plan. And then you'll do the same thing for the second question. Question, evidence, evidence, explanation. So let's use some examples. These are straight from the TExES PIL preparation manual on the Pearson website. How did you use the data for question 1 to determine the content students didn't understand and use that to inform your plan? So if you'll notice, I like this question, even though it's sort of awkwardly worded. There's no points against an awkwardly worded question, right? This is a great question. They got points for on the exemplars. They were scored a 4 on this question. It asked about the data, and it asked about your plan. So how did you use the data for question 1 to determine the content students didn't understand? And how did you use that to inform your plan? So the second question, another good example: how well do you think students demonstrated the ability to use textual evidence to support their claim? And how could you improve your plan to address this area of need? So again, you're asking, how did the students do, and what does this tell you for your plan? And then the third one on this example: what do you think, why do you think that a few students chose the correct option on the first exit ticket? And what is your rationale? A few students, I guess I read that wrong, I apologize. Why do you think that few students chose the correct option in the first exit ticket question? And what was your rationale for reteaching the lesson to the whole class? So in this question, the principal, obviously, the reason they're asking this question is they're not really thrilled to see that just a few kids missed the question, and yet in the teacher's plan, the teacher plans to reteach the skill to the whole class. So what the principal probably would like for the teacher to realize is this could be handled through a small group reteach rather than a whole class reteach. So that's the reason behind these high leverage questions, is you have something in your mind that you would like to kind of lead the horse to water, so to speak. You want to guide the teacher to the place where they can get their plan to be stronger, but you don't want to tell them that. You want them to learn to think this way for themselves. You're asking these great high leverage questions. And then here's another one. These are reflection type questions. Why do you think so few students were able to respond to exit ticket question 2 correctly? So this one doesn't ask about the plan. You don't have to ask about the plan. This one just wants you to probe deeply into why they missed exit tech question number 2 so often. So few students got it right. So the teacher needs to think about that. So what the principal probably suspects or knows is that there was a gap in instruction, there was a misalignment with instruction, there wasn't enough instruction, and so the principal wants the teacher to think about that and to come up with this answer. And then why do you think students perform better on the exit ticket questions on rounding, which is one I just made up, than they did on the questions about reasonableness? And the reason I made this question up is in some cases, you see that students perform better on the lower level cognitive task than they did on the higher level cognitive task, or the lower level standard. You know, the TEKS sometimes have simple TEKS and complex TEKS. And so why did they do better on the skill rounding than they did on this really difficult concept of reasonableness? So what I would be hoping there is that the teacher would start to understand that that it's important to understand the rigor of a concept and to devote more time and attention to the more rigorous concepts. So in general, if you don't know what kind of question to ask, you're always safe to ask a question about the data and follow it up with something from the plan. So something from the data, something from the plan. So which concept appears to be the most confusing to students? How does your plan address that challenge? That's a great generic question. You can put that on any scenario. If you want to memorize something like that, that's fine. Just make sure that you know how to back it up with some evidence that there was something confusing to students, and that the plan either needs to start to address the more confusing concepts, or that they have a reason behind these things. And then how do the responses to the open-ended question inform your plan? So most of the examples I've seen have open-ended questions, so the There's the one where the teacher has the exemplar of what she was hoping, or he was hoping the student would say, versus what the students really wrote or what the students really said. So how are the responses to the open-ended question informant plan? So those questions are just a good generic kind of question, but you need to make sure that you're looking at the samples that they give you of the data. You don't have a whole lot of documents to work with this time. So you want to tie the evidence and the reason together. So basically you're saying, I'm asking this because the result or the plan wasn't good. So when you ask a question maybe is, why do you think students perform poorly on number 2? And what is your goal to improve? How does your plan address that? I know that I want the teacher to realize that was not okay. Like how they performed on number 2 is not okay. You have to do something about it. You can't just stop now. And when I'm looking at your plan, I don't really see that this plan is going to really get them to where they need to be. So this question is why I'm asking that. So I want to tie the evidence and the reason together. But when you state it, you want to make sure that you state the reason in a positive way. So state the obvious. It will now and in the future. So you kind of go 2 directions. So helping the teacher understand how student data on number 2, where it was a very complicated concept, needs to help inform the plan or whatever you want to pull out of that question. I noticed on number 14 that the students did not do very well on this concept, and so in the plan the teacher has not really addressed the fact that this concept is challenging, is going to require multiple opportunities for reteaching. So I hope it will help them understand how to reteach this concept now, and will help them be a better planner in the future, or use data better in the future. Be specific, use the item numbers. Again, when you compare the exemplars and how they were scored by the scorers, the difference is often the fact that in the number, the ones that score 4, the example answers, the sample answers that score 4 on this test generally are very specific. I noticed that this item did this and that the plan did not cover this, or I noticed that the teacher is confused about the way the data should have been analyzed on this, or whatever. But use the number when you're trying to write your explanations and your evidence. And then don't forget, when you're doing your evidence and your explanations, that the standard, the domain that we're working with says in the end, the heart of it is to improve the teacher's instructional practice and to improve student learning. So again, state the obvious, write that in your answer. The goal with this question is to help improve the teacher's instructional practice through better data analysis, while also improving student learning on this critical concept that they will need to know in the future. Almost there. Here's the sample response for number 4. Let me move me up here. And you are certainly encouraged to pause the video and to take a look at this. And the rubric that scores this one is also in the website, the study guide. I usually just Google. I have mine bookmarked, but you can always Google the PIL manual and get the scoring there. And here's an example score for number 3. You can see a little bit of difference between the 3 and the 4. Not much, but just a little. And then finally, the encouraging word for you, twinkle, twinkle, little light bulb. So when you get to number 3, you may be pretty tired. This is a rigorous 5-hour test, not a lot of breaks, right? And you've got to write 4 constructed responses. And I think half the battle with the constructed responses is the sheer volume of documents that they give you. So I want you to remember on number 3, this one to me is much easier than it first appears. So when you look at it, you may go, oh my goodness, an item analysis, a plan, so much data, so much, just so much. But it's not. It's not so much. It's much simpler than it first appears. Don't stress over every little idea that goes floating by in the sky. Just grab 2 good questions, 2 pieces of evidence for each one, the reason for it, and repeat. So 1 question, 2 evidence, 1 reason, repeat. And remember, you've got this, principal. We're about to call you principal. You're about to be the next official certified principal in this great state of Texas. Best wishes. Let me know when you pass.